Welcome to another episode of HCA Talks Health. I'm your host, Zina LaRue, and today I'm talking to Alexander Bell. And is this the guy who invented the telephone? Not quite, but our modern day Alexander has an equally impressive resume. And Alexander started his first company at age 20. He grew it into a £1 million turnover. He helped lead a collaboration between IBM, His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales, now King Charles, and business in the community. And he then took a role working for Google and later founded a second six-figure startup, and all before turning 30. So it's very impressive, not bad at all. So welcome. It's such a privilege to have you as our guest today.
Thank you for having me. Just to absolutely clarify, I would never put myself on a similar level with Alexander Graham Bell. He got his the telephone patent, which is almost 150 years ago now. He was 26 when he got the patent for the telephone.
Really?
So just to put into that context, like, he blows Zuckerberg, Musk out of the water. He was 26 and had, still to this day, the most valuable patent in history was granted to him. So yeah, so there you go.
No,
I share the name, not the brains.
I wouldn't agree with that, but yes, absolutely. So it's this amazing, technology and patent that he, was behind his name, but also he was quite a wise man. If I'm looking at the quotes around, I know you use that quote around, we see, but we don't, we look, but we don't see. What's that
Yeah,
quote?
we walk through life with our eyes shut. There are things all around us, right at our very feet, that we never see because we never really look. And I just think that encapsulates everything, where our whole journey of technology and where we've come to today. Yeah, I just think it nails it. And that I guess that's the difference between him and I. He came up with that quote 150 years later. I can't beat it.
Oh
So
wow, such a wise man. Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
yeah, so Alexander, you've worked in some impressive tech environments, including Google and Warner Brothers.
Mhm.
But by doing so, you realized, of course, the amazing benefits of tech, but you also learned how it is really impacting our focus and our productivity and our relationships. So maybe you can just tell us more about where the tech journey started for you and what your main learnings were from working in the industry.
Yeah. So I love tech. I always have. Right from I had a pager before the phone, the mass kind of mobile phones came out. I got my first mobile phone in 1997. It was this huge thing. It was a one-line 12-character one-color display. It had enough memory for 10 text messages
Wow.
and 80 contacts. Like, this thing was cutting edge. So, right from that point, I was totally addicted to technology and loved it. And my own relationship with gadgets just continued to grow, which is why I ended up, in the tech kind of industry, in the career that I followed. And I still to this day love technology, absolutely. But it was during the lockdown, the pandemic, where my eldest son, we have three boys, my eldest son, who was 7 at the time, turned around and he said, Dad, I've been thinking about Christmas and I know what I really, really want. And, I kind of, here we go territory. And I kind of said, okay, what is it that you want? And he said, I really, really want an iPhone. And he could just tell my face just dropped immediately. So he went to his backup strategy and he said, and I know that in the second drawer down in your home office, you've got an old one that you never use. So, I'll just have that one. And he was just so excited about it. But this sort of inner, deep parental kind of, response came out. And I said, no, they're dangerous. They're highly addictive. They're bad for your health. You're far too young. You're not getting one. And he turned around. He's the sweetest boy. But he turned around and said, but Dad, if they're really that bad, why are you and Mummy on yours all the time? And it was just one of those mic drop moments where I just kind of thought, wow, okay, what an observation from a 7-year-old.
Spot on.
Yeah. And it led me to sort of really question my own relationship with technology and how that is impacting the people that I care about more than anything in the world. And I started to kind of really think deeply about what had I done in my own businesses and what others could potentially do in their businesses and their lives to really try and rebalance this kind of impact that technology has on everything, because it just sucks up, so much of our day. If you can try and think back to a world either without phones, or if you're not that old like I am, then a world where the pre-iPhone era, essentially the BlackBerry era, if you can remember that,
Mm-hmm.
where the phone still had the keypads on them and they just weren't as good.
Mm.
And if somebody would say to you, in a few years' time, these devices are going to take up 3, 4, 5, 6 hours of your day, how do you feel about that? Everybody would kind of say, whoa, hang on, that's crazy. you know but that's where we are, and that's what these devices do. And it's not just the time element that they kind of really take out of our lives, it's the focus, it's the mental impact,
Mm.
the mental health side of things as well. And I talk about the frequency being perhaps the biggest problem, even more than sort of the total time consumed. Because if you look at the amount of times that you turn to your device, pick it up, quick look, swipe, unlock, whatever it is, the average user is kind of around 60 times a day. Some people are well north of 100, 200 times a day. And there are apps that will track this for you, and you can, just start to understand what your own usage is. But you try and plot that on a graph of your day, 24 hours a day, you're asleep for a few of those, how many times you're checking your phone. It interrupts everything. It is always there. And there are studies now that show that even if you've got your phone, so the base study is, if you have your phone on your desk or nearby when you're trying to work, your cognitive capabilities is reduced by about 26%.
Mm.
And that's been proven now, tested, well documented. But the worrying stat for me is, even if the phone is sort of out of view, but in a pocket or in a bag, your brain is still impacted by over 10%, right? So even if you think it's gone, it hasn't gone. There's like a ghost that is just there, like a shadow over your brain. And that's because you've interacted with it so often that your brain there's like a constant connection now. So you're waiting for a notification to happen, or a buzz or a beep or a ding. Your brain is just waiting for that next dopamine hit, basically.
Mm.
So it's just a huge, huge problem. And again, there was some other research that was done, I think it's called the Hawthorne effect, where if the noise and vibrations and feelings of your phone in your brain, it reacts the same as if somebody shouted your name from across the room. So that's how powerful the connection in your own mind is. So it's almost like you've got this thing nearby, and even if it's not nearby, it's still nearby, and it's just shouting your name all the time. So if you try and picture that, that's where we are with technology. And it's a huge problem. And that's just the phone. You take the phone away, and we're all, slaves to our laptops and slaves to email. And then when we think we're having downtime and we're, trying to, reboot and refresh ourselves, what do? Most of us turn to Netflix or to another device and another screen to unwind. And there's another set of triggers that's embedded in those.
Yeah.
So we just can't escape it.
Such a
It's
horrible,
everywhere, and it's
vicious
a big,
loop almost, hey? Yeah.
yeah. And it's all of that side that I kind of thought, wow, I need to think about, how this is impacting me in my life. But also I've got these 3 mini humans that are going to grow up with this technology, and I need to help them guide them through their relationship and their journey. So that's when I realized that actually, being in sort of inside the industry, and like I now have a VR virtual reality production company that's been doing that for about 11 years now. And that's fine. It's only B2B stuff. We're not creating kids games or anything like that. So I can feel okay about the work that we do with that business legitimately. But where do I want to be in 25 years? It's more dealing with this wider topic of technology, and that's what I talk about to audiences and work with organizations as well on this whole idea that that tech now rules us, and if we don't do anything about it, it will continue to find new ways to rule us. So we need to just take stock, take a minute, take a breath, and find a way of trying to rebalance, I guess.
But it's so true what you're saying, and I've never thought of it that way. But even if your phone's not, even if it's on silent, even if it's in another room, you keep on thinking about it. So even if
Yeah,
my phone is on do not disturb, it feels like this still is that pull for me to go check whether there is a notification. Even if the notification is not disturbing me all the time, I want to go see. I want to go in and check,
of course.
and even with of course emails, right? I'm really a sucker for a new notification. It just feels like
Mm.
I'm on top of things by checking my emails all the time, but it's not just the time, as you're saying. It's not just the time that it's stealing from us. We are on our devices for how many hours a day? You say, for
It ranges.
for
Everybody's different. I think the average is about 4 hours.
about 4 hours a day. So if you
Yeah.
add that up, obviously there's so much that we could have done with that time, right? So the one element is the time, but on the other side, as you're saying, it's impacting our focus and our productivity as well, because
Yeah.
every single time we get disturbed, even if we're just checking or unlocking, the time that it takes to get back to what we were focusing on
Oh yeah.
is compromised, right? So there's so many different elements and so many different areas that are obviously impacted, right, by this. So, and you mentioned dopamine. So, is that where the addictive element comes in, do you think?
Yeah, that's where a lot of the research shows that because of the dopamine impact on our brains that are triggered by these little notifications or even just the act of swiping to refresh, that's often linked with the slot machines in Vegas. The pull to roll the dice and to see what's going to happen. That's kind of where these designs of these apps have come from. That theory, that game theory. So, and again, the research has kind of proven that if you look at how a brain operates when it's on cocaine, it's similar to how the brain operates when it's getting these dopamine hits from
Mm.
technology.
Wow.
So if you think about that now, there are holes in some of that research because, okay, how much cocaine and all that kind of stuff. But just the idea of you getting these constant hits of cocaine during the day. And I always say, okay, let's take that idea and go one step further. Are you happy as a parent handing a bag of cocaine to your 7, 8, 9, 10 year old and saying, look, it's okay, darling, you can use this, but just don't use it at the table. Right? But it's true, that's what we're doing. And over here in the UK, you've got 9 out of 10 11-year olds now have a modern smartphone device. It's probably more than that. um, it's just absolutely crazy, and they're accessing these apps and that have 13 plus labels on them, but the platforms know that the kids are all using them. And I think that the latest research by Ofcom was showing that as young as, I think, 3-year olds plus, I think it was about 25% have accessed the majority of these platforms. And it was something crazy like 12% have accounts of their own. And you just think, like, what?
Oh,
Like, how it's maddening. But that's really focusing in on the social media side of things. But
yeah.
and probably you could throw YouTube into that as well. But yeah, it's a real dangerous world, and unless you start to really sit down and think about this and actually start looking at your own usage and your own behavior patterns and triggers, that's when you can start to kind of plot how you can make improvements. And I think that's what for sort of health coaching, this idea of digital well-being is starting to come up now, and I think it's really important.
Yeah, because it's quite frightening how technology really comes in the way of authentic human connection.
Yeah,
And we see this picture so often where people are sitting around the dinner table at a restaurant and everyone's on their phones, right? And
yeah,
they choose to look down at their screens or prefer the virtual chats instead of talking
yeah.
and authentic human connection. So it's quite sad, I have to say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's there was a great analogy. I can't take credit for it, but I can't remember who said it originally. But this analogy of the Wild West. So if you go to a restaurant or a bar and you're meeting with friends or a cafe, wherever it is, it's like those Wild West poker games, right? So it's the person who, they all put their phones down on the table, and it's like fastest fingers first. As soon as somebody gets up to go, take an order or go to the bathroom or whatever it is and leaves the table, you see people just dive for their phones, and it's literally who can get on their phones the quickest. And that's what it is. It's like putting a gun on the table and just killing the
Yeah,
conversation,
it
because
is.
that's what it's doing. But
Yeah.
it's just that habitual behavioral pattern that we've all created because everybody else has done it, and that's where we are. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's really hard not to do that. I'm really conscious of it because
Mm.
I constantly talk about this. But even when I go to a meeting or a restaurant or cafe, whatever it is, it's really physically hard not to get your device out and put it
It
on the
is.
table.
Or
You
it's
know,
just waiting in line, taking your
yeah.
phone out rather than starting up a conversation or looking around. You're just taking a
Oh yeah.
break.
People think I'm nuts all the time now because I literally will stand there and consciously, purposely not go on my device.
Yeah.
And everybody's on theirs, and they just look at me as if there's something wrong with this guy. Is he gonna commit a crime? It's
Yeah.
so
It's
so it's maddening. But if you go back to the time before that noise of chatter in a coffee shop, that's like a really so you're now at a stage where people will listen to ambient sounds such as kind of coffee shop chatter on YouTube and various other platforms in order to try and be productive. They'll listen to these background noises,
yeah.
and you
Yeah.
just think it's like, it's just bonkers.
Crazy. No, it is. Okay, so taking all of this into consideration, would you say that we'd be better off without tech?
um I just don't think it's a question that you can answer seriously, because I don't think there is a future that doesn't have tech in it now. The only future that doesn't have tech, it is humanity's been wiped out. It's that dystopian view of something's happened and we're gone. So therefore, I think the only future we can look at and consider is one that is full of technology. And there are huge benefits from technology. I am not an anti-technology person. I've just realized that we need to tap into and understand some of the negative impacts of technology and try and do something with it. Because if you can find balance, and if you can improve balance and get to a point where it isn't impacting your life or your relationships or your happiness or your mental well-being as much as it is now, then you can reach okay places. And therefore you can really tap into those higher benefits of technology. And it's almost a win-win, although it will never be a win-win because there's always somebody else on the other side of your technology benefiting from it.
Yeah.
So as much as I would like to kind of say, yes or no, I just don't think it's a viable option, because
Mm.
we either live with it or something's gone wrong and we're all gone anyway.
No, it's true. So it's all about we're going to have to make peace that it's going to be part of our lives.
Yeah,
And so the main point is that we need to find a way to live with it in a way that is not going to kill us or distract us or destroy all our relationships, right? And
yeah,
that's where a healthy technology culture comes in.
yeah,
So, what does that look like? Because I love your mantra without tech rules you.
yeah.
Right. So tell me about your tech rules and what a healthy technology culture could look like.
Yeah. So fundamentally, the idea of tech rules is just acknowledging that they exist, because we already have tech rules. It's just most of us have created these habits and behaviors without really either knowing or thinking about the consequences or the costs associated with using technology or devices for such a long period of time during the day. So we've kind of fallen into our tech rules, and they've almost been decided for us by usually by the creators of and the people who profit from the apps that we use. So I think step one is just acknowledging that we already have them. And therefore, because we already have them, we can change them and we have a choice. And so we can start to define what our tech rules should be and what we want them to be. And once you get to that level, you can start to have a roadmap and a clearer picture of, okay, I can do something about this. I do have a choice. So, we can start working on that. And then for me, it goes into kind of step one, which is really identifying what your behaviors are. So whether that's using an app, all devices now have built-in kind of data. If you're on an iPhone, it's in settings and screen time. In Android, it's settings and digital well-being. If you start having a look at those, they will give you an idea of how long you're using your phone for, what are some of the apps that you're spending most of the time on. So you start to get a picture of, what does this look like and what does my usage look like, and am I happy with that? What are some of the goals that I would actually like to either reduce, or I've never met anybody who says they want to increase their usage, but that could be an option for some people. So once you've got that picture, you can then start to do something with it. And for most people, the easy wins are looking at kind of the social media apps. And you can either go, extreme, delete them from your phone altogether. You can still access them from other devices, but if you delete the apps, it's kind of a hard cut. There's a brilliant tip that is to turn your phone to black and white mode. So you can go into, again, settings. It's usually under accessibility, and you can turn it black and white. Instagram is pretty rubbish in black and white in grayscale mode.
I can imagine.
So that's kind of a great tip. And then there's loads of apps that are out there to help you. There's Freedom, there's Forest. There's a new one that I love that's called Zario, Zario. And they will help you to go one step further into understanding what your app usage is on your devices. And then there are ones that will set up blockers, which you can use. And there's one that I love that's called Unplug, but it's with a Q. So UNPLUQ. And what they do, it's so clever. You can buy an NFC tag, right, that ships with this app. And you can set certain, Instagram and Facebook tend to be the big killers, or TikTok as well for a lot of people. So you can set this app up that every time you want to use one of those apps, you've got to find your tag, get it to your phone, access the NFC, and then physically unlock it before you use it.
Wow.
So if you really want to use this app, you've got to do all these things. You've got to go find this tag, and by the time you've actually done it, you sit there and go, this is just crazy. Like, I don't need to do it. Yeah, it's too much effort. So I love those types of things, but most of them don't solve the problem. And I don't think we can solve the addiction. I just don't think we can, because it's been built up for so long. And I think we need to kind of, again, just acknowledge that and just understand that you're not going to be able to remove it completely from your life. And, there is a movement of people coming off a lot of the social media platforms. I think that can be really healthy, especially the likes of Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. But you really need to kind of understand, if I'm taking something away, what am I going to replace it with? Because if a lot of people go through the motions of, okay, I'm going to go cold turkey, I'm going to delete all the apps, I'm going to use everything that you say, I'll get the tag, I'll do all of this, that won't make them happy if they are already in a kind of a deeper, darker place. It's about understanding that if we take that away, what are we going to replace it with?
Exactly.
So So then you kind of need to think about, well, what were you really trying to gain from the use of these platforms in the first place? If it was a bit of trashiness, then go and buy a trashy magazine. They still exist. So you can get your fix from a
Yeah,
physical
yeah,
mag. And then it's kind of thinking, well, if it's relationships that you were trying to create or build or keep on to maintain, you know, still use the online platforms, but use it as a destination to get to a real meeting or a real phone call or a video call with these people, because that's such a better connection than back and forward on posts, because that's just not a genuine conversation.
yeah,
So it's about thinking, okay, we can still use this technology, but let's make sure it leads to a genuine connection.
yes.
And that can be suggesting, let's meet up for coffee. We haven't done it in such a long time. We all, whenever I say to somebody, who's that one, two, or three people that you would love to have a conversation with, but you just haven't caught up with for so long? And we all have them.
Mm,
Just call them.
yeah.
They would love to hear from you. But what we do is we spend time stalking them on the platforms and just making sure we've liked their last few posts.
Yes. And I think
That's
also what
that's
we
that's not
do,
friendship.
yeah, and then we also make loads of assumptions around their lives. It seems
Yeah.
like they're doing really well, because we often compare our worst parts with their best parts by
Yeah.
looking at only the best pics on social media, right? So, but what I love what you're saying is replacing we need to replace that hit that we're getting from technology and social media with something else and looking what is
Yeah.
it that I'm really looking for here. And as health coaches, that's something that we often support clients with around food. So
Yeah. Yeah.
often
Yeah.
we use food for all kinds of different reasons as well, also to get that dopamine hit. And I'm hearing exactly what you're saying. We can't just, it's almost like a metaphor of pulling a chair from underneath someone.
Yeah.
If we're just going to take away the tech, or we're just going to take away the food, they're going to fall, they're going to cry, and they're going to want more food or more
Yeah.
dopamine, right? So we definitely
Yeah.
need to put something else in there. And yeah, looking at connection or rewarding yourself in some other way. Maybe you're just overworked, maybe you need a break, maybe you're bored, right? So being able to address the root cause of what's going on,
Yeah.
I think it sounds like an ideal solution, but I don't think it's always that easy
No.
to
And this is
yeah,
where coaching can play a vital role in
yeah,
this.
yeah,
It's a journey and it's going to take time. This is an addiction that has been in the making for over 15 years. I got the first iPhone back in 2007. Facebook, really started to take hold around that time, and the social media platforms. We can go back to MySpace, but it wasn't as addictive. It was pretty rubbish.
yeah,
So this has been a long time in the making, and the usage, if you attribute how many hours we've poured into these things to try and start to reverse that, it's a huge task. But what you need to think of is, if we don't do anything about this now and we continue another 15 years down the road, how much have we spent and wasted? Don't wait until your kids have grown up and you've lost that opportunity of having that connection with them because you were just pouring hours down your phone, basically.
exactly.
And that's why I think it's so important to try and address this now and
Yeah,
try and do something about it. But it's not an easy fix at all.
yeah. So you've got three boys, right?
Yeah.
And how do you implement this with kids, or how do we raise kids with a healthy technology culture? Because I think it's a bit different compared to setting these rules for ourselves.
Yeah, it is. I'm lucky that Dexter, who asked for his iPhone and kind of triggered this, he's now only 9. So I've still got a couple of years before this is going to really come to a head. But there's a great strategy that was recommended to me, where rather than giving them a phone at kind of age 11, because that's the crucial point. They go to, it's here in the UK, they go to secondary school, and they get to a level where everybody has a device. So it's really impossible as a parent to say you're not having a device, and it's equally impossible to say I'm going to give you a really low tech, clamshell flip phone, old school phone that you can use, because they'll get equally as bullied if their phone isn't one of the latest gadgets. So one of the best things that I've seen, rather than trying to manage their usage and all the rest of it, is to have a shared household phone, right? So you have this one device. It can be the latest Apple iPhone, but it's a shared device amongst all of you. And it's this device that they can pick up in the morning and take to school and bring back with them. But then it goes back into the shared device box as soon as they come home. And then it's somebody else's turn. So whatever they do on that device, yes, okay, they could wipe the history, or they could do various things to hide their usage, but it will get found out. And it's this understanding that it's not their device, and it's a shared device. And until they can kind of not necessarily prove that they can use the technology, but once they get old enough, they can start to then have their own devices. But don't just give them a phone at age 11, because it's just madness.
Yeah, I love that idea. So it's not theirs, and I think the time consumption obviously is going to go down by quite a lot,
Yeah.
if they do it in that way. So no, such a great idea. I love that. And then just thinking about the rules that you apply to your own life. Can you maybe share with us which ones specifically you use in your own life?
Yeah. So I think it's about fairness as well, because we need to lead by example as parents. But equally, we're all trying to deal with this relationship with technology. So, I say that to our kids: look, if you see me on my phone and you think I'm not present, you can call me out on it, and you can put my phone in our phone jail that we have in the house. Right? So they have as much authority on the device as I do. But that goes two ways. So equally, if they've spent too much time playing on the games consoles and things, then I can call them out on it and say, look, guys, time's up. We need to do something. But that doesn't mean that I get to go on my device, because they can just throw it back on me. So then it's a case of, right, we need to do something together. So, and the first kind of before phones, the biggest thing that parents come up with is this games console issue, because again, it's this fear of them missing out, and all the other kids have one, so therefore they need one. And I was brought up absolutely with the games consoles, when the Commodore 64 and all of that came out. I absolutely lost my childhood to most of those devices. But it's important, because playing games can be really stimulative and learning and all the rest of it. So I'm totally pro for those with a limited sort of cap on it. So we had a problem where we knew that the boys really wanted a games console, and how were we, what age were we going to allow them to have one? And it was during the pandemic, and they were at home, they couldn't play with their friends and all the rest of it. So we thought, we can't solve this on our own. We need some help with this. So luckily, it was coming up to Christmas time, and we kind of, consulted with the big guy, in the North Pole, and he said, "Don't worry, I've got this. I'll send you a letter." So on Christmas morning, the kids see this big box, and they're like, could that be the Nintendo that we really, really want? And of course, they rip it open, and it is, and they're ecstatic. But with it is a letter from Santa, and it's Santa's Switch rules, right? And it was this A4 page, beautifully handwritten by Santa, with these rules on it, which kind of say, this is, I'm giving you this because you've earned it, and you're having a tough time, but you're doing all the homework and work, the homeschooling and everything else. So you guys have earned this, but it comes with responsibilities. You have to look after it. If anything's broken, my elves can't fix it. This is expensive stuff. You need to make sure your rooms are tidy, your homework's done. This is a reward, not something that you can just turn to at any opportunity. Mum and dad say comes first, all these kind of great rules and ideas that came with it. So from day one, they accepted them, because it was at the point of receiving the gift. and they just, it's part of the parcel. They don't question it. It's kind of, yeah, this is what Santa says, and if
That's
we want to
it.
have this benefit, this is
Yeah.
what we do. So, you know, and even to this day, they've had it a few years now. Even to this day, you know, okay, it's not to the letter. You know, they don't go to it to the letter. That we don't have to constantly refer to it, but they know that it's there, and their management of it is far better understood because it happened at the point of them receiving it.
Yeah. And I love how,
So
they can't argue with the big guy that
no, no,
he
no.
didn't make the rules.
Well, they can, but it's not going to end well. You know, this happens, you know, one very important day every year. So if they fall out with him, it's going to be a pretty miserable Christmas from this
I
point
love it.
onwards. So,
No.
so yeah, so you know, things like that can be really really useful, and that's why I think where we are with technology and with kids especially, you know, they should come with these warnings. You know, cigarettes, mobile phones are kind of society's cigarettes right now, you know, and it took so long for society to be told that actually cigarettes are bad, and therefore we'll put some horrible pictures on the packaging to make people aware. You know, maybe not to that extent, but I do feel like there should be some regulation around mobile phones and technology that says, look, if you're under 13, and the vast majority of platforms that are on these things are 13 plus,
Mm,
then, you know, here's a warning. You know,
absolutely.
you wouldn't walk into a 15 rated film as a 9-year-old and just be allowed to go in and sit
No,
down,
no.
unless you were disguised and looked a bit older and were with your parents and things. I
Yeah.
certainly did, but you know, that's where we're at.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, but I find there's so many similarities with tech use and how people tend to use food as well.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah,
you said, as parents, we need to lead by example, right? And
yeah,
it's the same with food. You can't expect your kids not to have all the takeaways and the sweets, but you're having it, right? So it's
yeah,
the
yeah,
same applies with tech, but also how I find that many of the foods, the addictive qualities of food or some of the colorants or artificial ingredients in some of the foods are really harmful to our brains, so I also
yeah,
feel like there should be a warning on some of these food packages, so it's the same
yeah,
thing. It's almost like there's so many different areas that is impacting us, and we need
yeah.
to be cautious, and we need to set our own rules in order to protect ourselves and our relationships and our health, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think kind of, you know, just one of the kind of thing that we do as well at home is the whole kind of upstairs downstairs thing.
Mm.
You know, if you still got your phone by your bed, like it's impacting your sleep crazy amounts.
Mm.
And we all know the importance of sleep, and that obviously is something that the health coaches will work on. Like you've got to kick it out of the bedroom. You know,
Mm.
take your partner to bed, not your phone,
Mm.
because the problem is like we're waking up and we're stressed before we even get dressed. It's
Yeah.
the first thing that we look at, and our brain just goes, oh my god, we're looking at the inbox again, and we're looking at this, and we've got to do that, and this is what's happening, and oh, we haven't caught up with the latest news headlines. You go to the news, it's just doom, 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 doom. So
Mm.
you know your head's fried, and you haven't even changed your pants. Like
Exactly.
that's where we are. So it's hard again, but you've got to try and kick them out of the bedroom. Ideally, you've got to try and kick them out of the upstairs altogether.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, we need to set boundaries. I agree. So I just want to think a little bit about some new technology coming in. So we
Yeah.
know that Apple's new headset is being released in 2024. So can you just give us a brief explanation of what this will be all about? And
Yeah.
mm,
So it's been a long time coming in the VR community. We've been waiting and waiting and waiting, and the rumors have been going around for about the last 12 months now that Apple are finally going to plant their flag in the sand, and they have. So this Apple Vision Pro, which is what they're calling it, and they've really kind of focused on this term spatial computing, right? So what they're trying to say, and it's, you know, this is a $2 trillion plus company. right? So this is not just some crazy idea that Apple's come out with. They've waited and waited and waited. Facebook rebranded Meta, which was all kind of tied in with this idea of the metaverse and where they're going with it. For years now, they've been pouring billions into the development of the technologies, but they don't have that cool consumer brand underneath them. And that's what they've really lacked in the marketplace. Apple have that. They have the brand loyalty from their customers. They're seen as the market leaders when it comes to technology. I'm a huge Apple fan, massively. So it's been a long time coming, and they've finally done it. And their vision for this vision is that it will start to replace and also work alongside the existing screens and technology. So their hope is that you will put on this headset and you will be, limitless in terms of the screen. Your world is the screen now, and you're going to be interacting with it in new ways. And how that crosses the real world kind of outside of the headset is what they're really focusing on. And this kind of idea has been labeled as, mixed reality or augmented reality. But they're calling it spatial computing, or spatial reality is what they're kind of referring to. And if you look at it from where it is now, so they kind of have this idea of the headset, and the headset is going to be super cool. They've blown out the specs that all the other headsets have at the moment. The community, the VR community, is really excited about the quality and what they're bringing to the table, which is why it has this $4,000 price tag. It's going to be $3,500 at launch, but if you wear glasses, you have to spend another $500 to get a prescription lens for it. So it's going to be $4,000 for most of us. And that's going to be £4,000 when the UK are allowed to buy it. Like, they're not daft. That's how the pricing goes. It's not just an exchange rate. That's where it is. But this is a first generation device for them. So this is step one in a 10-year program. The cost will come down for future generate. That's why they've labeled it a pro device. So, it will get cheaper. They're hoping that this technology will take off. But for me, you need to think about the bigger picture. So I think consumers will still have an issue with having to physically put on a headset. That's been the barrier to kind of VR ever since, it came out 25 years ago. And Apple's first headset will have that problem. People are kind of like, well, I've still got to put this thing on in order to get into the space. It doesn't take, many dots to line up to say that, well, how many people wear glasses? How many people wear sunglasses? That's obviously the route that this is going to go down. Google had Google Glass out, what was that, 7-8 years ago now, which was kind of their first experiment to have a little screen in a headset glasses. There's lots of companies developing with glasses and eyewear technology. So it's going to happen very soon that the chipsets and all the technology will be embedded in a really smart frame that will just be like a pair of glasses to put on.
It'd be very cool. Yeah.
I would say that will happen in the next 5 to 10 years. Like, they will be as the take up will be similar to glasses wearers. And it's not a big jump to say people who don't wear glasses, look, all we're asking you to do is to put on these really cool, lightweight pair of glasses. Loads of other people, loads of your friends already wear glasses. So we're not asking you to do anything out of the ordinary. Just try them on, just like your sunglasses, just try them on. And at that point, I think is where the mass adoption will come in. And that's where I'm really concerned that as a society, we will adopt it. Because if you imagine the barrier now being in your pocket and in your phone or on your wrist, moving that to being in front of your eyes, that's just gonna be trying to have a conversation with somebody when you've got, two phones almost in your direct eyesight. It's not going to be genuine communication or conversation anymore. It's going to be picking up on everything that you say and giving me little prompts. Hey, Zena mentioned this 3 months ago. Why don't you mention that again?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. hey, if you're trying to impress Zena, say this. Like, honestly, that's
Yeah.
where it's going to go.
Yeah.
And that's a future that I'm not excited about, because I think it starts to really, really kill the kind of the deep, meaningful connections that we have as humans.
Mm.
And I hope that there is a backlash at that point. But when you've got a $2 trillion company saying this is the future of our company,
Mm. It's so difficult to break that force, right?
yeah,
But yes, connection. I think connection is something that is going to become a rare commodity, maybe in
yeah,
future. And that's where, of course, something like artificial intelligence comes in as well, right?
yeah.
Where robots and artificial intelligence will be able to perform most tasks that many of us do today, right? So what do you think is? Do you think that that human connection in something in a job like health coaching or psychology, do you think that that is still going to be of worth in some other way? Will it still have value with artificial intelligence coming in, or will do you think that will also be able to be created through artificial intelligence, the connection?
So I think the what we're seeing now is AI being a really good sidekick.
Mm,
It helps you to analyze data really, really quickly, suggest ways of thinking or solutions to problems that that we haven't got the capacity to think about, or that would just take us far too long. So it's kind of a really useful sidekick. But that sidekick is already at a point where it's kind of starting to equal our own sort of intellectual capabilities. And there's a key phrase used in AI called the singularity point, which is the point at which one AI model is able to demonstrate that it is cleverer than human. So it matches our capabilities. Now, in some ways, we're already there. AI is able to take, the exams that a doctor would take, and is scoring far higher than the average of humans. It's able to instantly almost beat the best players in some of the biggest strategy games, chess and Go, from not knowing anything about the game to within 2 hours being able to be the best player in the world. And that's from a game that has almost, I can't remember what the number is, but it's the game with the with the most possible moves. So it's not quite an infinite level of moves, but it takes a lifetime to be able to master that game. And AI today, in fact, it was a couple of years ago now, within 2 hours, it played, I think it was 10 million games against itself, processed all of that learning, and was able to beat the best human player in the world.
wow.
So again, it doesn't take a huge an expert to really understand that very soon that capability is going to be almost instantaneous. And when one AI model learns it, because they're connected, they're able to pass that knowledge on to all of the other AIs as well.
Mm,
So you're going to be in a case where we just cannot compete at all at any level.
mm,
But the one thing that we still have is this idea of creativity, of emotional intelligence, that an AI model can try and replicate, but it's still a replication. It's not genuine. And I think as humans, we'll be able to pick up on that.
mm,
And that's where you have this, okay, so in 20 years time, you can have the best husband or wife, or however you want to describe a partner, a life partner, and it's a robot and it's an AI and it's incredible, and it just does everything for you and makes you feel great about yourself, and all of those really positive things. But at a deeper level, you still know that you've either purchased this thing, or you're paying for this thing, or it's not another free will
yeah,
human that has
yeah,
chosen to be with you. And I
exactly.
think it's that idea, that sort of level, that is just ingrained in us, that has been through billions of years of evolution,
Mm.
that we will still just kind of value a human more than any technology. That's my
Absolutely.
hope. That's my hope.
Absolutely. Yeah, I hope so too. Yeah, and I think um, as practitioners in our field, I think being able to supply that human connection to our clients is very important, but also being aware of, how technology, it's not just coming in the way of connection and productivity and focus, but possibly also our health, right? So
Yeah.
I'm thinking, what how could someone like a health coach or someone working in the health industry support our clients best? Because I think, with all this technology also comes more sedentary behavior. We're
Mm.
sitting more. We don't have to move as much. So what would your thoughts be? How can we help clients support,
Yeah.
help
Okay.
to support our clients around this? Yeah.
So there's a tool that I use, just to give a real kind of simple solution that everybody can use. So I use an app. So go back to the original study that I said, if you remove your phone from the room whilst you're working, 26% boost in cognitive capabilities. Great. But you still want your phone because it's in the other room.
Yeah.
And employers would still say, I'm not so keen about you kicking your phones out of the office. So I use an app called Focusmate.com.
Mm.
And it is the best productivity tool I've ever used. And I've taken a lot of productivity courses.
Mm.
And what it does is you schedule a one-on-one kind of Zoom call with somebody. It can be somebody random, or you can have favorite users on there. And you can literally go on there now. Somebody will be available in the next 15 minutes. And you schedule your session, usually 50 minutes long. And you go, hey, Zena, I've got 10 emails that I need to do. What are you going to work on? And you'd say, I'm working on this document outline. I want to try and do 500 words. And we'd say, great. Okay. You both mute, but you keep your cameras on and you do the work for 50 minutes. And at the end of the 50 minutes, we check in, the timer goes off. We check in and say, hey, how did you do? Yeah, I only did 250, but I tried my best. Okay, great. And you move on to the next session.
Nice.
And there are so many psychological things in that app that it is just unbelievable, because you are sort of pre-committing to a task. You've got a greater sense of accountability. You don't wander off and do something. You stay focused. You feel like you want to do it so that because the other person is there as well, and you want them to achieve their goals. So honestly, it's just incredible. I recommend it to
Cool.
absolutely everyone.
I'll go check it
But
out.
in terms of what you were saying about kind of health and how that impacts the body. So I will schedule about 6 back-to-back sessions throughout. If I'm doing the school drop off and pick up, I'll get 6 sessions in the middle. So each one of those, I'll work for 50, I'll walk for 5. So after that 50-minute session is up, I get up out of my chair, I go and move, I'll go and walk in the garden, or I'll make a quick drink or whatever it is, but I'm away from the technology for at least 5 minutes, because you get a 10-minute window before the next 50-minute session starts.
Mm.
So at least, 6 times of the day, I'm up, I'm out, I'm doing something else, my head's somewhere else, and then I come back to it and I go again. And that constant cycle of kind of refresh and reboot and re-go is just amazing. Honestly,
Mm.
it's like,
Yeah.
if people ignored everything I say, apart from that one tip to use Focusmate, or even just don't use Focusmate, use something else, but work for 50, walk for 5. If they just did that, they would see a benefit for sure. And
Absolutely.
that helps with that movement and that idea of body. And, you can throw in standing desks, and some people go to the next level of having treadmills under their desks and stuff like that. You can, that all works as well. I have a standing desk here, and I love it. But yeah, breaking up your work into sessions and planning some getting outside time is really key. The other thing I kind of say is to take LOO breaks. So LOO. So obviously we all take LOO breaks. Most of us take our devices into the LOO breaks with them, which is, if you think about it, pretty disgusting.
It is.
So I have it's called a luminometer, which measures the amount of bacteria on a surface.
Yeah.
So I've swabbed a lot of people's phones, and they are like
I
disgusting.
can
You know,
imagine. I can
they are
imagine.
really really
Yeah.
gross. So don't do that because it's gross. You know, don't take them to the toilet. But this idea of loo, so you need to look, you need to observe, you need to listen, and you need to be offline,
Mm.
right? So listen, observe, offline is your loo breaks. If you take a loo break and then think, oh, I've taken a loo break, I need to take another type of loo break, just devices down, get outside, get some fresh air, get into nature, just take the opportunity to listen to the world around you. And this ties into the Alexander Graham Bell quote, right? Which is that, we walk through life with our eyes closed. There are things all around us right at our very feet that we never see because we never really look.
Yeah.
Just take the time to go and look and go and listen and be offline and just enjoy the world that's around you, because there is an amazing world around us.
Yeah. And we're missing out.
So
We're missing
yeah,
out on this beautiful life. So I love how, it's really not about eliminating or taking away the tech from our lives. It's really just about creating new habits to support us to
yeah,
still be able to connect and have the relationships and the focus and be productive at work. So kind of trying to get the best from both worlds, right? So yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Just one last question. Where can our audience find you?
oh, I'm a total nomad, so I have no technology at all. No,
Great.
I so I'm at alexanderbell.co.
Okay.
Is my website. There's information on there. I'm on LinkedIn as well. If people type in Alexander Bell, I'm quite visible on there. But that's really the only platform that I use, because if I mean, LinkedIn is still a problem area for me. I have to really control, my access and usage to LinkedIn, because you just get sucked into it. The
Yeah.
conveyor belt of content. You just get on it. So I'm personally on Facebook, because of some groups that I'm kind of tapped into, but I wish I could come out of those. But a lot of those are kind of work related groups. So I'm kind of in there for that. Never been on Instagram, just knew from the outset that that is not a good place to be on. So I've never had an Instagram account, and I won't get one. I did Twitter for a while, but I'm off that now as well. So I try and stay away from them, but I am on LinkedIn if people want to follow my sort of posts and content on there,
Yeah.
or my website.
Yeah. So you kind of need to practice what you preach, right? So you can't have
Yeah.
all these different social media platforms
Yeah,
because
yeah. I mean,
not all are free.
there are people kind of in this world who are spreading this type of message on those platforms, and I think that is really important.
Yeah.
I just know that if I did it, I would lose about 10 hours a week.
Oh, definitely.
So,
Easily.
and I just haven't got, I don't want to make that trade-off, so I'm just
Mm.
staying away from them.
Yeah. Thank you. It was really enlightening, and I think you're doing extremely important work. So thanks for being on a mission to help us to take back control of our lives, and improve the quality of our work and relationships, and even the relationship with ourselves. So yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, no, for sure. Thank you for having me. And yeah, I hope it's been helpful for some people.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, take care. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.